and it's being used more often in the industrial space, but it can mean different things to different people, of course. So we'd like to start off the presentation by clarifying what digital transformation is really all about from our view. Because when we talk about digital transformation, we're not just talking about technology or technology for technology's sake, or simply putting technology on top of older technologies. Rather, digital transformation is a little more comprehensive shift. It's a shift in thinking, really, and how one does one business do, and the impacts it has on every aspect of the business. So when you think about digital transformation, you really have to think about processes, people, and programs. We have to look at the roles that each of those areas plays in digital transformation. So today we'll bring digital transformation into focus by talking about those three areas and some of the real life examples of it, and why Ignition is an excellent platform for it. So to get us into the people, processes, and programs discussion of what digital transformation is all about, I think I will turn it over to you, Kevin. Let's just start us off on processes.
Sounds good. Thanks, Don. So if we take a look at processes in general, what does that really mean? Every industrial organization has its own unique processes for making products, supporting its initiatives, and running its operations. Basically, a process is anything that a company does in a certain way. And every company has a whole slew of processes that are used for their organization. So being able to quickly adjust existing processes and create new processes quickly is critical for any organization that wants to be agile, but especially so when it comes to digital transformation. So let's talk about the opportunities and the obstacles that are related to processes. In other words, where are we trying to go and what might make it difficult to get? So if we look at how digital transformation can improve processes, streamlining existing processes to make them more efficient is one of those most common goals that we have here. If you use digital technologies like cloud, edge, or machine learning, for example, to rethink existing processes, it can help with companies going through this journey, right? You might want to take a look at, for example, going from manual data collection to an automated type of data collection, publishing data to an MQTT cloud broker. The digital technologies that enable the processes are going to be something that we focus on here in a few additional slides. But if you're thinking about how to actually optimize some of these processes in a significant way, often technology has a key point in that and can help you think through the processes. What processes are actually possible? How can I optimize some of these things in a way that might not have been available 5 or 10 years ago, or let alone 30 years ago when maybe a production line was originally put in and some of this stuff didn't exist. So when thinking about processes, sometimes there's a bit of a mindset shift that needs to happen in order to be able to accommodate the newer ways of thinking, and also to be competitive with other companies that are starting today or who have started recently and are already using some of these newer technologies there. One of the things that is worth talking about here is some of the common obstacles to process improvement. Many people equate digital transformation with digitalization. So you have to, talk to folks and convince them there's a lot more to it. You shouldn't just digitalize the process and stop there. If you don't know what digitalization is, basically that's taking old analog processes or the way that things originally were and just putting it into computers. So taking a form, making it look exactly the same inside a digital platform, having some process that used to be tracked manually, now it's tracked inside a computer, inside a database, but it's not really rethinking the process at the same time. So digitalization is just, think of it as a lift and shift. You take your existing processes and you make them digital, whereas digital transformation has a lot more to it. If you're doing it right, you're going to be rethinking these processes at the same time. Does it really still make sense if I'm using technology? Should I be just creating forms here, or should I be automating data collection, making it so nobody actually has to type anything in or write anything down? Does that make sense at the same time? The technology exists, but does the cost trade-off make sense? Is it worth it from that perspective? There's a variety of considerations when it comes to thinking about how do you employ new technologies here, what makes sense for your processes as you're adjusting those processes, and what's even possible, what's not possible. But you don't want to limit yourself down to just thinking of digitalization as the way to do digital transformation, because you're going to be missing out on a lot of the great new features that exist, and the great new technologies that are out there. There are a lot of entrenched ways of doing things. So along the lines of what I was just saying, you need to take a look at if it makes sense to adjust or break out of the old ways. And this includes other things as well as just, instead of just that lift and shift, possibly those entrenched ways of doing things actually are bad. Maybe they have been processes that have been built up over time, and person X did things in a certain way, and now person Y does things in a certain way. It reminds me of a story about someone who learned from her mother to take the ham and always cut off the ends of the ham before you put it in to bake the ham. And then asked her mother and said, well, my mom did it, and that's how I learned, and that's the way to do it. And she talked to her grandma, and her grandma said, well, the oven wasn't wide enough, so I needed to cut off the ends and put it into the oven. And that's a good example of, a lot of things inside this industry where you have somebody who's done something a certain way and it might not make sense. I mean, the reasons were really good when they originally started doing it, but reevaluation of these things is important. Locating where the problem is can take time. It can be challenging. Sometimes fixing problems means changing an existing process, and sometimes it means starting a completely new process. And you need to basically decide what makes the most sense for your business. And scaling out processes really can be challenging. Some processes work for a single location or a single person with certain skills. When planning a new process, you should really think about how it can be scaled out for more locations and more people rather than just applying to a single location. So the next piece inside this overall picture is people. And for that, we'll turn it over to Kent.
Perfect. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I do want to talk about people and why they're so important to digital transformation. And really, the people and the organizational culture that you define are a huge element in your organization's success. So you have to take the human factor into account in order to achieve digital transformation successfully. Like Kevin was saying, it's more than just about digitization of all of your assets, of your data, of those kind of things. To actually have success, for something to transform, people have to do that transformation. And so that transformation will only happen if key stakeholders are on board. And so when you're talking to stakeholders at an executive level, you got to focus on big picture goals and benefits rather than the deep technical details. In other words, you got to know your audience. And staffing is crucial. You need to have the right people in the right positions in order to support your digital transformation initiatives. And so you got to ask yourself if you have the right team to make it happen. And this can be contrary to what a lot of people assume. They assume digital transformation is reducing my workforce. I'm having machines and computers and machine learning handle my whole process. And computers are great. I've built my whole career around computers. But at the end of the day, insights are often made by people, not by computers. And so true digital transformation is recognizing that we need the right people at the right time to make the right decisions to make sure that things go smoothly. And so what are some of the opportunities related to people in the organization? People can be used to improve communication and collaboration across the organization. And so we know that equipment should be able to connect and talk to each other. That same concept of having the interconnectivity between all of your equipment, as we get into big data and Industry 4.0, all those kind of things, the same concept applies to people. We want to get all the data in front of all the right people so that we can empower them. We can improve decision-making through a wider availability of that data and take data up the chain instead of keeping it siloed. And so using digital technologies to improve user experiences, we can give data to people in a way that they can easily digest it and understand it. And as we get more data to people, they inevitably need to spend some time looking at that data. They may need to learn some new skills. They may need to change how they've been doing things for a long time, maybe not cut the ends off the ham, as Kevin's saying, but as they have those new skills develop, then digital transformation becomes a transformation of your workforce as well. And with that data, they can revolutionize your processes. And so it kind of goes hand in hand with these processes, that the processes develop, the people develop with it, and that leads the people to change the processes again, and you keep growing. We find that digital transformation is not an overnight thing, but transformation is a continuous process. And so what obstacles do you face as you try to do this? Well, people are kind of at times like old technology, and it's hard to implement new systems. And how do I get them to all talk nicely to each other? People are resistant to change. And so you can fix a lot of that with education and empowerment. And it can take away some of these negative perceptions about change. Because people might say for digital transformation, it's too time consuming, it's too difficult, it's too risky. Maybe it has a steep learning curve. And people might resist the need to change and learn new skills. Or maybe they're just saying, I don't want more data flowing throughout my organization. I'm already worried about security. And so all these cybersecurity concerns can prevent people from wanting to do digital transformation. And to those concerns, we really want to talk about in a little bit here how using the right tools can help prevent this from being so time consuming or so difficult. How you can leverage the appropriate training materials that can help reduce that learning curve. How you can implement things in the right way so that cybersecurity, you end up becoming more secure, not less secure as you do this transformation. But part of all of that process is all about not just the people, but also about the programs that you put into place. And so for that third portion, programs, I want to turn it back over to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kent. So why programs are important for digital transformation. Once again, when we're talking programs, as was mentioned at the beginning, we're talking the actual applications, we're talking the technology, we're talking the whole basically technology stack that exists inside any sort of digital transformation that folks are going through. If programs were not involved, it wouldn't be digital transformation, it would just be transformation. Digital transformation specifically has to do with the technology. It's one of the important linchpins here. So when we're talking about these programs, we're really talking about the technology that's behind the things and is supporting your initiatives. Any new technologies are going to be important for this. The new technologies really are the linchpin of that digital transformation. Employing modern software programs is necessary to really realize all the benefits that digital transformation can bring. Any new technology that you add needs to work alongside the technologies that you have in place. Very important for brownfield situations, and almost everybody finds themselves in a brownfield situation at some point. We don't live in a greenfield world. We're not all able to have completely new things that are being built. Most of the time, digital transformation is transforming something that already exists. And so it's really important that the technologies that you choose are going to interoperate with the existing systems, are going to play nicely, are going to be able to be installed alongside, and you're going to be able to get value from these as they're running right next to the existing systems that are in place that you're either moving away from or going to keep in place. Either way, it's important that there's interoperability. And modern technologies make this a lot more possible than it used to be. Digital transformation opportunities that are related to the applications is pretty much everything across the board. Just picked out a few nice highlights here. One of them, improving operational efficiency. That one is pretty clear why that's important. Some folks are using advanced technologies for those types of things, where the operational efficiency can be tied to machine learning and algorithms and things that folks have written in order to do, let's say, line optimization or process optimization, or across pretty much every industry, there's things that can be optimized, and improving that operational efficiency can have a real impact on the bottom line as well, which is the time and money savings right there. Time and money savings can come from other things in addition to efficiency as well. Of course, deduplication of things, changing out processes for completely different processes, the idea of running things at specific points, all of that. And if we were to go into all examples for all the different industries, that would be a webinar in and of itself. We have some really nice examples that are coming up in a second here, so I will be excited to talk to you about a few folks who are doing a lot of this and have gone through a digital transformation journey themselves. Of course, the opportunities also present themselves when it comes to removing limits imposed by outdated technology. So it's very common to have a conversation if you're sitting there as a supervisor talking to someone, or a plant manager, or anyone inside an organization saying, why don't we change it to do this? Why don't we do things this way? It's pretty common, and in my experience working with lots of folks, the answer often comes back, well, we just don't have the technology to do that. And normally that answer is actually couched in that's too hard, or that would take too much effort, or that is something that would be tricky to accomplish. If you have the right tools in place, a lot of those no's, or a lot of those things that normally would come back with a high cost associated with them, that can come back with a much lower cost, because outdated technologies make a lot of things really hard, and new technologies make a lot of things a lot easier than they would be otherwise. So if you move to a new technology platform, if you have these newer tools in your tool belt, then it can enable a lot of this transformation that you want to be doing. Some obstacles related to programs have to do with risk of downtime or disruption, of course. You don't want to have more downtime than you need, and if you're a 24/7 operation, you don't want to have any downtime. Compatibility issues between existing and new programs is very important to evaluate, and integration can be hard. Whether you're trying to upgrade or just increase interconnectivity, integration absolutely can be hard. There are a lot of technologies and protocols to be dealt with. These types of issues, they can be mitigated with the right software and the right approach, fortunately.